Hey SmartPak fans, I'm SmartPaker Dan. She's Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak staff veterinarian and medical director, and we're here to answer horse health questions asked and voted on by you. Now this episode, there's something a little special about this one. Do you know what it is?
I think so, but go ahead.
So at the end of this episode, we will officially answer 200 questions.
Excellent.
So thank you guys so much for taking the time over the last 3 years to submit such amazing questions. We appreciate it so much. But we do want to have a little fun fact here for you. That means we've given out over 200 SmartPak gift cards. So for those of you who are new to the channel, if you do ask a question and it gets answered in one of these videos, you win a SmartPak gift card. So definitely make sure to submit your questions at the end. Do you want to do a little walk down Ask the Vet memory lane?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to do a little quiz here because there are some fun facts that have come out of Ask the Vet. And we're going to see how well we know the answers to these. So the first question, after the 5 this month, 5 questions, how many questions will we have answered in Ask the Vet episodes?
Well, that one's easy because you said it earlier. You said 200.
Okay, I think that's a little too easy because we're answering the question specifically asked 5 this month. So that makes me think there's going to be more.
Oh.
So I'm going to say, is this like Price is Right rules, like closest without going over?
So like if you say 201?
I'm going to say 201.
Okay, well.
201. Let's see, and let's see what the answer is. Oh, 202. Does that mean do I win?
You do.
All right. That's a lot of questions you've answered.
It is, yeah. Now I feel tired.
Well, let's move on to the next one. So, after each episode airs, we post each question in its own video. What question, broken out in its own video, has been watched the most in terms of number of views?
This one I know.
Okay.
This one is, and it surprised me, it's something like how to tell a horse's age by his teeth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say rain rock, because I feel like we've seen a lot of questions come through on that one.
I have seen a lot of questions about that, but I think it's the telling a horse's age by his teeth.
Okay, let's see the answer. Telling a horse's age by its teeth. Nice job. High five. All right. What question earned the most votes during our voting process?
Oh, man.
Ooh, what question earned the most votes?
Can I steal your rain rock question? I'm going to steal the rain rock.
What question earned the most votes during our voting process? Throughout the entire time?
202
Yeah,
questions.
okay. Can I steal your answer of telling a horse's age by teeth?
Why not? Why not? Yeah.
Okay, so you go rain rod, I'll say telling a horse's age by teeth. Let's see the answer. Anhydrosis, and that had over 2,800 votes. Wow, you guys really want to know about anhydrosis.
Yeah, which by the way is not sweating.
Okay, there
Sorry,
we go.
it's the veterinarian in me.
Well, maybe we can link to that video in the
Hey,
description.
there you
I don't know
go.
if we can do that, but I just promised it, so hopefully we can. All right, let's see here. Okay, next question. So Louise H. is the viewer that has had the most questions answered during an Ask the Vet episode. How many has she had answered in total?
So not just in one episode, but
Total lifespan, yeah. She's a frequent submitter, apparently.
Well, if I say low, then you'll just go one over
Okay, do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you go first.
I'm going to say 7.
8.
Oh! 5. We were both wrong, but thank you, Louise, for submitting so many questions. And then our last one, other than YouTube, where have the most questions that have been answered during a monthly episode come from? So our choices are the blog, email, Facebook, Ask the Vet forum, Instagram, and Twitter. So these are ones that have actually been answered.
I feel like you can't go wrong with Facebook. It's an answer.
I'm gonna go Instagram.
Okay, all right.
Let's see if we can.
We'll see.
We'll see what the answer is gonna be on this one. Oh, so we are being told it's a trick question. The form or Instagram, 32 each. So is half right? No.
Sure, yeah.
I like bonus points here.
Glass half full, right? Yeah.
Well, that was definitely a fun little walk down that. I can't believe anhydrosis had that many votes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's kick it off and we'll get answering these questions so we can get to the 202 mark for you. So question number 1 was asked by Kelsey on our forum at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. And Kelsey wants to know, is it possible for a horse to get too much protein in their diet? So I was actually really excited to see this question come through because I spent a lot of time on our customer care team, and this is definitely a question that gets asked a lot by customers.
Yeah, I know people are concerned about protein in horses, and it turns out that horses don't need much protein, but according to my favorite resource, you know what it is?
I can only imagine.
The NRC nutrient requirements of horses. They say not much evidence exists concerning the effect of excess protein consumption.
Okay.
Meaning that there's not a real problem with it. Like horses can tolerate a lot of more protein than they need.
There's no evidence supporting that too much is causing concern.
What happens if they get too much is protein is broken down by the body, specifically the liver, and then excreted through the kidneys as urine. And that breakdown produces a byproduct called urea, and urea needs water to flush it out. So if you feed your horse too much protein, they're going to drink more water and pee more. And so a lot of people say they smell, their stalls are wetter and they smell the ammonia. So that's one
downside,
negative con, I guess. Another is...
But that's not a major health issue.
No, it's just an annoyance.
Okay.
Yeah. Another is there is a little bit of evidence that feeding too much protein with horses that are exercising or working, it alters their acid-base balance, and that it might cause early fatigue. So that would be, again, not a health issue per se, but more of a performance issue.
Okay.
Yeah, and then because it's, quote, metabolically expensive to break down protein, meaning it takes a lot of work and energy by the body, it's possible that if you're feeding your horse more protein than he requires, that he's actually going to lose weight.
Interesting.
Yeah, and if it's a young horse, might not stunt the growth, but just result in a slower growth rate.
So because it takes the body so much energy to utilize the protein, therefore it could cause him to lose weight because he's exerting more than taking in?
Yeah, exactly. You're using energy or calories to break down the protein, and instead of using those calories for weight.
Interesting. I think that's going to get a lot of people.
Yeah. I mean, there's not the evidence for that is not conclusive, confirmed, but it's pointing that way. Yeah, and it makes some sense. So the question I get asked a lot is, in feeding horses, if you feed horses too much protein, will it harm their liver or kidneys because that's where the work is being done to break it down? And the answer is no. If those organs are working fine, then that's great. That's their job to break down protein and other constituents. If, however, the liver or kidneys are compromised, so their function is not 100%, now you shouldn't feed excess protein.
Okay.
So
if they're already having an issue with those organs, then we probably should be careful about how much protein.
Yeah, and so a simple blood test from your veterinarian can help you identify that. But that would be the only concern. If the organs that break down protein are compromised in any way, then they can't handle excess protein. But if they are fine, there's no reason to give. There's not a reason to give more, and there's not a lot of health reasons.
Well, that's what I was just going to ask you. Is there a time to feed more protein?
Well, the NRC again, it lists out how much a horse needs. Adult horses in no work, adult horses in work, young horses growing, and young horses that are growing and working. That's lactating mares actually need the most, and so you should aim to feed the amount of protein they need, and not less or more. And when you're feeding protein, it's not actually the protein that you're feeding, it's amino acids, right? And so the first limiting amino acid is lysine. There is a value in the NRC for lysine. So that's really the target you should aim for. Am I providing my horse enough lysine? Because without that specific amino acid, I can't do anything with the other proteins.
Because amino acids are the building blocks for proteins.
Correct, that's right.
So therefore, at that point, you need to make sure you have those in order to
And Narita Richards, who was here before, has a, maybe it's Legos, where she tells you to build it like a protein tower, but then she doesn't give you the one color that you need. And so you quickly learn that, oh, that's lysine. If you don't have it, you can't build it.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I've seen people do it with like necklaces, like make a necklace, and every fifth one needs to be like a green bead, but then they don't give you any green beads. And you're like, well, I can't make it.
So you need that in order to keep going.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So no real reason to be super concerned about overfeeding.
Not that big of a deal, yeah.
Awesome. So great. So moving on to question number 2. This was submitted by Bettina, also on Ask the Vet forum, and she wants to know what is the best way and/or supplement to control flies. Horse's legs are getting bit up by flies, and I'm not sure what to do about it. He lives in a dry lot paddock.
Okay. So the overall answer is take a well-rounded, comprehensive approach to fly control. And that means maybe an insect growth regulator, or IGR, like a solitude or simplify, hard word to say, that keeps the fly larvae from maturing in the manure. You can also use something like a fly stopper that has the beneficial parasitic wasps, I think they are, that also don't let the larvae grow up to be a fly. Yeah, so you're reducing the number of adult flies on a property, and so that will help your horse. And also there's some perimeter things you can do. You can always clean up your property to make sure there's no standing water, vegetation, branches and grass, all that needs to be gone.
If you have manure piles on your
manure
property.
piles, yeah, best to have that taken away, compost or spread or removed, something. But the thing I think for this horse, because she specifically mentioned his legs are getting bit up, and you know there's supplements that deter biting insects, and they create a so-called personal fly zone around horses.
Okay.
But because the legs are so specific, I would use physical barriers. And we have one here that I think is really cool. The horses at our barn use them. They're new from SmartPak. They're the relaxed fit fly boots. And this is a stiffener that goes up the back, and that's where the Velcro is. But this would be on the horse's cannon bone. And so it's very cool, breathable, airflow.
It feels super durable too.
Yeah, it's very durable. I like these a lot. I mean, you can always use your traditional fly boots, but if for whatever reason you want to try something new, I would give these a whirl and see if your horse likes them. We have 2 at our barn that won't wear fly boots. They take them off. We put these on, and it's like they don't know they have them on. They walk around, and we're like, don't tell them they have boots on. So, and that keeps the stomping down and all that. But you know, then you've got your fly sheets and fly masks and stuff. But the other thing I would use for legs, I've had a lot of success with as a veterinarian. And we used to sell it, and I don't think we sell it anymore. 2 companies make them. They're more of a sleeve-like sock.
Yep.
So Equifit makes one. It's called Horse Socks.
Yep.
Comes in black and like a nude color. And then Summer Socks or Summer Winnies is the other company. And sometimes theirs are silver impregnated for like scratches and wounds on the legs. Those are really good. Donkeys get fly strike, this is called, really badly. And so I like to use those products on donkeys especially. But if your horse is getting his legs specifically eaten up, then I would cover them in addition to the other fly control measures we talked about.
I know you mentioned the Solitude IGR and fly stoppers as kind of preventing the fly population becoming adult flies, basically maturing.
Correct. Yeah.
So is that something people are going to want to start like earlier in the season?
Yeah, I typically start those about a month before. I also start the supplements just for the horse, the insect deterrent supplements about a month before to get that in and going.
And those are supplements that contain like garlic and things of that
and
nature.
And vinegar and brewer's yeast and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So
perfect. Get ahead of it. I can't believe it's almost fly season, which is good and bad.
We're way into fly season. Where do you live?
Well, Massachusetts has been cold and kind of rainy until like today.
And then like the day it stops raining, they're out
flies
in full
everywhere.
force. So you got to have all this stuff ready. But
so I'll be making some purchases after this video, apparently. All right, so moving on to question number 3. This was submitted by Equine Rewind on YouTube, and they would like to know, should I use shavings or hay for trailer bedding, and should I tie my horse in the trailer? The other day he fell down, and I'm worried he's going to hurt himself. Ooh.
So there's
lots of great ones in here.
There's 3 questions, right? There's what bedding to use for trailers, and should you tie your horse in a trailer, and then the one I had was why does a horse fall down in the trailer? Yeah. So we'll talk about all those. But as far as bedding, that is controversial. Some people don't use bedding, and some do. And the main pros and cons I think about bedding is the reason to use it would be traction. So if there's manure or urine in the trailer on the floor, it could get slippery, which could be a reason for falling. One reason not to use bedding is it can get dusty.
Yep.
So I have a horse with airway disease, and I don't want shavings, because you have to keep the windows open and you're driving maybe at 65 miles an hour. And it can swirl around in there and get in their eyes and get in their nasal passages, and that's a solid reason not to use bedding. But maybe you could find a bedding that is not so dusty or light.
Okay.
I tried newspaper.
I was just going to say, shredded paper.
Shredded paper was excellent as far as there's no dust. However, it's very, very light. Now, what many people do is they dampen the bedding before they go, and that keeps it down. So you could dampen sawdust or shavings. You could dampen newspaper. What I went to was cardboard.
Oh.
Again, it's no dust, but it's a little bit heavier.
Yeah.
And it absorbs and also provides them with some cushion. Now, my trailer has the rumbar flooring footing, so it's very cushy, very, very, very cushy. But the cardboard worked well for me. So that's something to think about as far as bedding.
A great way to recycle materials.
Yeah. So her other question was, should you tie horse in the trailer? And I thought about this one. It depends. It depends on the kind of trailer you have. Like if you have a stock trailer or you're using a van with a box stall, then you wouldn't have to tie because they're supposed to walk around.
Yeah.
If you have a slant load or a straight load, you have to tie because they can get their head and neck in places where it shouldn't be and do some serious damage. I mean, it can even be life-threatening. Yeah. And when I have a horse and trailer, I like to use a breakaway halter because if there's a serious problem, I want them either to be able to get out of it themselves or me to be able to get them out of it. And if you use a leather halter, it'll either break or I can cut it pretty quickly versus nylon or rope. Those scare me a little bit. The other thing I recommend, I've had these in my trailer so long, they do not look like this anymore. They're called tie-safe trailer ties, and they're made of Velcro up here. And so if something happens and the horse can actually pull hard enough that this releases and it comes apart, and then they have a little section of lead rope of tie on them. That's another safety tool I use.
So that way you can tie him so he's safe for the majority
of
it.
But if you need to get him out, or
danger,
if he needs to get himself out, he can with enough force. Yeah.
That's a great one because I know a lot of people do get questioning like, should I tie, should I not tie if we do get into a situation?
Yeah, it's. I think you're better off tying. There is a thing. Horses need to put their heads down in order to drain their nostrils. Because when they trailer, especially one like mine that has airway disease, when their head's tied up, they can't clear their nasal passages, their respiratory tract, and so a lot of gunk gets in there, and they can really cough and carry on when they're done and have a lot of discharge. On the other hand, if you let them get their heads down too low in the wrong type of trailer, and you have an abrupt stop, I mean that's just a disaster.
Asking for a recipe of disaster.
Yeah. Speaking of abrupt stops, she said, did you say your horse fell or?
So the other day he fell down and I'm worried he's going to hurt himself.
Wow.
And I'm assuming it's in the trailer. It didn't specify, but I'm assuming related to the question.
That would have been a much bigger deal. I'm not sure why her horse fell. There are horses known as scramblers. Have you had one of those?
I have been, knock on wood, luckily mine are mostly good trailers.
Not either. Seen a lot of horses with injuries, and by the way, they say before you put on, say, shipping boots we have back there, or shipping quilts, make sure your horse knows how to wear them because they can actually do more damage wearing protective gear if they aren't used to it or accustomed to it. If like the first time you put shipping boots on your horse and then you walk him in the trailer, I mean, if you've ever seen one walk,
I was gonna say we all see when you first put like shipping boots on your horse and they do that weird walk where they go like this.
Let him practice a little bit first, yeah. But the scrambling is like on corners and things, and I'm thinking that might be just because the driver is less experienced and is not taking the corner as slow as they need to. The other thing is, this is easier.
Okay.
Maybe. I was going to say, put a coffee on the dash and see how you do. And so when you drive, you shouldn't spill it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do, you're driving too fast for your trailer, and that might be why the horse is falling. So
that's a great point. And a lot of times some horses are newer to trailering, so they might be a little more nervous and a little more
horses got to practice, drivers got to practice.
For sure.
Yeah.
So kind of a full management thing there, learning process.
Yeah, I mean, when I first learned to drive a trailer, I drove it a lot without a horse in the back.
Yes.
Because I wanted to figure out how to slowly come to a stop, slowly start. You don't want to have abrupt stops or jackrabbit starts. And the cornering is tricky, and people behind you will want you to go faster.
Yes.
And I always think about, I don't know who that is, I'm never going to see them again, but the love of my life is in the back of my trailer, and I'm driving for him, not the person behind me.
That's a great point. You
Yeah.
don't know who that person is, not your responsibility.
Not my responsibility.
Moving on to question number 4, then, because I have no good transition for this. This was submitted by Lauren on YouTube, and Lauren says, keeping cribbers entertained. In my case, the boy does live in a run-in, so there's no stalling boredom there. Sorry, I got really excited to say the does because she put in all capitals.
Does, okay.
So he lives in a run-in, so there's no stall boredom, but he's
Okay.
still a cribber.
Oh, so that's the question. She wants ways to keep him entertained.
Yeah.
Okay.
These, not really a question, lost statements, but that's
okay,
apparently what's
okay, all
happening.
right. Waiting for the question. All right. So cribbing. This is a hot topic of research right now, which is good because there's not that there's a lot of cribbers, but it's when your horse is a cribber, it's
annoying.
It is annoying. So what are the reasons? What are the negatives of being a cribber? It's not just that it's annoying to have to listen to it. They can crib to the extent that they don't eat.
Yep.
And so they become thin. They're the hard keepers. The jury is out whether cribbing actually causes colic.
I hear that one a lot.
I hear it a lot. It could be, if you know that cribbing causes your horse colic, then you have to do something about it. It wears down their teeth because they hook their teeth onto a surface and pull, and so their incisors get worn down. And then it's destructive on the property.
Yep.
Right? So there are some reasons why cribbing would be not something you want to allow to happen. On the other hand, the researchers are now saying it's not a boredom issue.
Oh,
It's a coping mechanism.
really?
They're coping with stress, especially environmental stress, but it could be pain, anxiety, frustration. And in order to be, we've dispelled the myth now that you catch cribbing by seeing another horse doing it. The horses don't imitate or copy other cribbers, so that's not a concern.
So it's not like the horse's mom was a cribber, so therefore it watched the mom and now it's a cribber.
Its mom was a cribber, and now it could be a cribber because it's genetic.
Interesting.
Yeah, but not because you allowed a
learned
cribber to
behavior.
move into the barn and now the horse next to it cribs. That's not what happens. If a horse begins to crib, it's because it had the genetic predisposition.
So it's a
And then
genetic component to this.
It is. And something triggered it. Stress triggered it. And so the horse copes with the stress by cribbing.
And it could be a physical stress, or it could be just stress for its job or something of that nature.
Could be. Well, one of the premier cribbing researchers, Dr. Daniel Mills from the University of Lincoln in the UK,
Yes.
he says about half of cribbers, they will begin at about 20 weeks of age. And what happens at 5 months?
Weaning.
Weaning.
Ah.
Weaning is the most stressful thing that will probably ever happen to a
Yeah.
horse, because you're taken away from your mom, you're moved, you have a change in diet, and probably to a high sweet feed, a high grain type diet. And sweet feed itself is linked to cribbing.
Interesting.
So it's stress, not boredom. It's coping. And so in this situation, the run-in is better than a stall, but it's not as good as pasture.
So they use it almost as a way of like self-soothing in a sense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the things that you would want to do for a horse that cribs is provide them with full turnout onto a pasture,
Okay.
with buddies.
Okay.
So this social aspect of this is very, very important. A high forage diet is key. They have to have that long stem roughage. Avoiding sweet feed type grains is key. And oats, it seems to be okay. There was a study in 2011 out of Cornell, and they found that, I think to her what she's trying to get at. That stall toys can help with cribbing if they're the kinds that encourage horses to lick and chew.
Okay.
Because they videoed cribbers and they found that cribbers, all of them licked like a preemptory lick before they started cribbing. So they're like, if we can put a stall toy in a horse's area that encourages him to lick, maybe he'll just keep licking and not actually hook on anything and crib.
Interesting.
So, but they found a reduction in the number of crib bites by doing that.
Okay, so this guy is already starting off on a great start by having a run-in, so he's already having some access to turnout. If we can potentially expand that to pasture with a friend.
And make sure he's got a buddy. Yep.
And then hopefully that will help potentially.
Right. The other thing they're saying is maybe we should just let these horses crib. I mean, one of the titles of the articles I read was...
well, now you're just blowing everyone's
I know,
mind.
it's crazy. Was the horses need pacifiers.
They need pacifiers?
Cribbers,
Yeah.
maybe. I think of it as, they talked about redirecting the cribber. So maybe you don't want the horse to crib on a specific fence or board or stall gate or whatever. So you could redirect them much like you redirect your cat from your new sofa to the scratching post.
Yeah.
So you give the horse a safe place to crib, maybe a rubber edged flat, horizontal surface that so they won't crib on wood or metal or something that's maybe unsafe or wears down their teeth as much.
So giving them a safe outlet to.
Yeah, because if they're stressed in their lives and they're frustrated, and their quirk, their genes tell them crib to cope with this, and then we do not allow them to crib, it just makes it worse. So allow them to crib, maybe not all the time, maybe some of the day. Maybe they wear their cribbing collar half the day and they're free half.
Okay.
So the hybrid approach is something that's being sort of put forward by experts right now.
Perfect. Especially since you're saying there's currently no research tying directly to colic and things of that nature.
As soon as a study comes out that says, yep, there's a link, then another study comes out and says, nope, there's no link. So
we're not ready to make that call
what it could be is if you know in your horse that your horse cribs and then he colics, then you're maybe someone who has to keep their horse in the collar. But if you have a horse that has not colicked, then I would explore this new way of thinking of maybe just let him be. It's okay to crib.
It would cause me a lot less stress trying to remember to put the cribbing collar on.
Yeah, and now tied, and they get
Yeah.
scars from it, and it's
It's not fun.
it's probably not comfortable.
No, for sure. And I feel bad when I have to put it on. So.
Yeah.
Well, perfect. Well, I hope that helps you out, Lauren, and let us know how your guys doing. So on to our last question, question number 5. This was submitted by My Amigo on Instagram. And My Amigo also asked a question for your Dr. Narrative Richards
great.
Ask the Nutritionist episode, which should be airing
Nice.
soon. So thank you so much for being such an active viewer and asking questions. For this episode, she would like to know, my mare's back legs stock up when I can't be at the ranch for 2 or more days.
Right.
What can I do to keep her legs from swelling up?
That's tricky because the best thing, we probably should say what stocking up is. It's just a harmless swelling of the lower legs, usually the 2 back legs, due to inactivity. Blood and other fluids pool in the extremities. Okay. And then as soon as the horse walks around, then it goes back into circulation. And you see it a lot when horses stand in their stalls. So I'm guessing when she can't be at the ranch, it means that her horse stands in a stall. So my first advice is there any way where you board your horse, the horse cannot be in a stall, or maybe has a run-in,
Have some option for turnout.
or has a paddock, or is out 24/7, whatever. Because the stalling is what's doing it, because they're not moving. And I've been told that stalling a horse is the equivalent of bed rest in people.
Oh.
Yeah, so you can imagine how, fluid pools in the extremities when people bed rest. I mean, the same thing happens for horses.
So just if there's options to get some movement going on for the days that she's not there, that would be the best case scenario.
Yeah.
Does it have to be for like a long extended period of time?
Well, you mean...
Or just a little bit every day?
hopefully she gets turned out every day, right?
Well, yes, but...
The ideal situation would be if she's not kept in the stall overnight.
Okay.
Yeah, so like it's a stall, it's a place with the run-ins attached to the stalls, or there's a stall attached to a paddock or something like that. That would be ideal.
Okay.
Yeah.
And outside of like management, are there other things that she can do to help?
Well, and again, there's a lot of, my advice depends on her situation, because if she's in a situation where there's somebody there, then maybe she could wrap, as long as there's someone there to look in on her horse and make sure that it didn't get loose or something, because some bad things can happen when horses wraps loosen or too tight or something. You know, and so if she could like ride her horse in the evening and wrap, and then overnight, and the next morning the staff could unwrap.
And by wrapping, you mean like standing
Like
bandages?
like a standing bandage,
Okay.
you know, like the quilts, and those are polos, but like a standing bandage, you know, is the thin kind.
Yep.
That would be one option. We had mentioned earlier the Equifit makes the socks for horses.
Yes.
Or theirs is called something different. I
think
think it's just
Equifit
called
is
horse
called
socks.
sock, yeah.
Horse socks. And then there's the summer winnies. Those are actually really good. They're sort of a compression bandage.
Oh, okay.
So they would keep fluid from pooling. And those you can leave on for more than a day at a time. But it worries me if nobody is at the facility to look in on the horse. When horses wear clothes, that worries me that nobody looks at them, because things can happen very quickly.
They get very mischievous whenever you put something on and no one's around for some reason.
So when she gets there, I mean, and there's all the cold hosing and the icing and that, but poulticing, and you can even do like a liniment rub down. But once she gets there and she pulls her horse out, in just a few minutes of walking or exercise, the fluid's all going to go away. So it doesn't, unless there's heat or pain or lameness, if the horse isn't eating, if there's a fever, if there's some other sign, if it's in one leg, then a veterinarian would need to be called out. And it's not actually stocking up, so we should have a medical disclaimer on here. But
so if there's swelling and it's going down within like 20 minutes of walking, probably
then
not a
it's
major
probably
concern.
stocking up, yeah.
And then therefore, if we could just add in something simple, if it's
turnout would be ideal.
If that's not an option, we do have some wrapping options if someone's there.
Correct.
If we're seeing lameness, then we definitely need to have the vet out to
Excellent
address that.
summary. Yes. Yeah, so it's not a big problem. A lot of horses have, especially older horses. So Dan's summary is ideal.
Nailed it.
Excellent, nailed it.
Well, that is it for this episode of Ask the Vet. And again, thank you guys for submitting so many questions over the years. I can't believe we're at over 202 officially now. But we are going to need your questions for our August episode. And you can ask those questions on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the SmartPak blog, and our forum at smartpak.com/askthevetquestions. Just make sure you use hashtag AskTheVetVideo. And then questions submitted by July 9th will be eligible for that August episode. If your question was answered in this one or in a previous one, I know we still have some outstanding people who have not redeemed their SmartPak gift cards. Reach out to our customer care team at CustomerCare@smartpak.com so you can do some shopping this summer.
I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I wonder if the actual 200th question should get something extra.
Ooh, you are going to get in trouble for this.
It just seems so important.
It does seem important. We can figure something out for that. We can figure something out for that, hopefully. So while we figure that out, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and have a great ride.